Alive and Well STL is a presentation of the St. Louis Regional Health Commission and Rare Gem Productions to build a healthier St. Louis. Power up with the positive. Learn more at oneraregem.com. That's ONERAREGEM.com.
Support for Alive and Well STL comes from Beyond Housing, helps entire communities become better places to live. Learn more at beyondhousing.org.
The Regional Health Commission works in partnership with regional health sector advocates and stakeholders to improve healthcare access, reduce health disparities, and improve health outcomes for the uninsured and the underinsured in St. Louis City and County.
Alive and Well STL with Bethany Johnson-Javois, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network and Managing Director of the Ferguson Commission.
Hello and thank you again for joining us today. My name is Bethany Johnson-Javois, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network and Managing Director of the Ferguson Commission, and most importantly, host of Alive and Well STL. Today we are joined in studio with Dr. Donald Suggs, publisher and executive editor of the St. Louis American. And as we talk and think about what it means for our community to be alive and well, I'm pleased to be speaking with you, Dr. Suggs, this morning. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm fine. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. Through your work, as well as the things I know about your life experiences, which I hope to get more into that, you carry a unique perspective globally, locally, regionally, and I'm happy that you could join us to talk about being alive and well. So I'm going to start off with the obvious stuff and then talk about some deeper stuff. The St. Louis American is one of the jewels of our community and has become a jewel of our nation. It gives place to the voice of St. Louisans, the voice, most importantly, of the African American community. And with your vision, the American has the largest readership of any weekly newspaper in the state of Missouri and has a second recognition as being the leading African American newspaper in the country. Is that true?
Well, we've been fortunate, yes, in that way. We have won some awards, and we are the largest weekly in the state, yes.
What are you most proud of when it comes to the St. Louis
Well, I
American?
think I'm most proud of any efforts that we've made that help us to reflect some of the things that are going on in the community. I think that our value lies in our being an institution that's very much integrated into the community and its concerns and its interests, its values, and its aspirations.
I'm going to start off with the easy question. What does it mean to you to be alive and well in St. Louis?
Well, this age in my life, I guess to be alive. Actually, I come from a pretty long line of long livers. My mother's 102. I think that the challenges that we see in our community, and I do think there are some opportunities as well. It's discouraging because a lot of the trends, are not so positive in my view. I think that St. Louis in particular, during this time, globalization, all these things that are going on that are really sort of outside our ability to impact them directly, but they do influence our lives and how we are going to be able to make some of the changes that we need to make if we're going to be more successful as a region.
So I know you to be someone that prioritizes physical fitness as part of being alive and well. Tell me about your regime and what you do, why you do it.
Well, it has changed. As we age, certain things happen inevitably. I was a runner, fairly serious runner for many years, 45 years. And then that wasn't possible, certainly not to do that as I had done for many years before. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, we started strength training, and that also we cross-trained with some aerobic things as well. And I do think, I am absolutely convinced, the data reflects that, and I think in my own personal experience that that cross-training does help to slow down aging. Aging, has to do with cognitive decline and sight, all those things. But I do think, I am convinced that alone, obviously the most important thing probably is genetics. And after that, I think nutrition, and I think also to have a life that has balance, and I think to deal with the spiritual side of your personhood.
How do you keep your spirit alive and well?
Well, I think that you have to nourish the interior self, and I think it varies with individuals. I mean, I come from a traditional family of faith.
You and I share a certain acronym of faith. You want to share that with the
Well,
listeners?
actually, I've never, been a formal member, but I was certainly my early life was shaped by the values and the experiences that I had with people of faith. My mother was very devout. She became Pentecostal, I think, when she was 19, and she's 102. And I've never seen her waver. We were a family of very modest means, but she had a kind of inner strength and a determination, as well as a deep commitment to her children, to her church, to her community. And so at least I was introduced to those values at a very early age. And I mean, I appreciated it then, but I appreciate it even more now as I've grown older.
So take us back to your childhood. Your mother clearly is still influential at 102 in your life. You told me that no question was off the table. So Dr. Suggs, how old are you?
Oh, well, I'm past 80. How's that?
Really?
Yeah, my friends tell me that, the problem, I have the same reaction. I look in the mirror, I say, who's that? Because people will feel very differently about you when they hear that age, because I feel very differently about it. And so I'm not at all, it's not about a vanity thing, that I'm still active, I'm still very much involved with a newspaper, with a business that's demanding, and you're still asked to be able to reason and to interact. And I think it just is off-putting for people when they hear that, so that's my only reservation about that.
It's a
I
stigma
don't
to
feel
the
that
age once you
personally.
say it.
I think people, and all of us, we're conditioned in that way. I mean, you walk, and I look in the mirror and I'm saying, who's that? And I didn't get any sense about aging until I was about 70. I didn't even think about it one way or the other, because I'm fortunate to, still be able to be fairly active. And I'm surrounded by friends. I was just recently in New York the last 2 weekends, and the people that I interact with are very bright, creative people, and it sort of encourages you to at least try to be halfway sharp, and at least to be engaged. So I think all that, just as the physical side, on the fitness side, I think on the mental side, the more you are engaged with people. I'm fortunate. I had 3 children. My son passed away, but my daughters are well educated, and my friends intellectually are very sharp, bright, creative people, and I think that's helps to keep I'm probably better than I would be ordinarily, because it wasn't my profession, which had more to do with, in my view, and I don't want to be disrespectful, more training, vocational training, and had some challenges and some satisfactions. But this circle of friends and my children's, the way they were educated, is a lot more stimulating. One has a larger view about the world and kind of deeper insights into some of these things, because you ask all these questions of yourself and you have these concerns that are way outside my upbringing as a working class person. So I think that's made a big difference in my own life.
So I'm wanting to see if you'll go back with me to your childhood
Sure.
a bit, and tell us about the life events that shaped you now, that
Yes.
happened when you were
Okay.
young.
I grew up in a life in an environment of strict racial segregation. The restaurants and the movies were all segregated, but the schools, because I was from a community outside Chicago that was too small to have dual school systems, so the schools were integrated. And one thing about very young children is they will migrate toward each other, and so at some point, I don't say this with any pride, but apparently I learned the code switch fairly early, and I could get on fairly well with my white classmates. As a matter of fact, we started a newspaper when I was in junior high school with a guy who was the smartest guy in our class, and we were very much a diverse group inside the classroom. African Americans were not the majority, and we had a number of people from Latin America. We had many people from Mexico, Puerto Rico, Eastern Europe, Croatia, Hungary, Poland. So I had a very varied upbringing. Of course, I didn't realize that at the time. And we had a little bit of a stirring of our politics. We had a school strike, which helped influence me a little bit. Also, we were subject, or at least we were exposed, I was exposed, a number of us were exposed to to labor organizers who came from the East Coast, Brooklyn, probably in retrospect, were communists. They gave you some insight about your circumstances, why you were poor, why your father had this menial job, he was a smart person, and why he tried to explain, put some context around your circumstances. So I think all those things had some influence. I also lived all of my summers with my grandmother, who was also Pentecostal. And as a matter of fact, she was apostolic. Her church initially was in a residence, and her pastor was a woman, Mother Brazier, who was the mother of Bishop Brazier. So I knew him as a young man coming back from the Navy. So I was exposed, had that experience, but also physically, they lived in a nice apartment, with carpet on the stairs and marble on the side, in the entryway, and a balcony, and we were about a block and a half from a very nice park. In my own hometown, I lived in a basement, and, cold water, and so, but at least I had access, or at least I was exposed. So the political influence, the diversity, the racial diversity, I got on well with my white classmates.
And tell me about this first paper that you helped to
Oh,
co-found
yeah, well, I
in
was
high
not
school.
proud
I
of
see
that.
some stuff coming later.
Yeah, it was called The Galloping Gossip, which was really very chatty. My co-publisher was a nerdy guy, and I guess it was a bit more outgoing.
Were you the cool guy?
I wouldn't say that, but I mean, I could hang, you sort of have this double, at that time, there's a very strong requirement among young black males to be, at that time it was called cool, have swag, and so.
And you could code switch
I
effectively.
I could apparently, yeah, and not being a big man, first of all, when you are a little better in school, they're going to, in quotes, pick on you. So I discovered how you handle that is that you had to be willing to fight. So what you would do is try to make certain that happened in the schoolyard or someplace where they would break it up. And once they found out you would fight, then they were, the big guys were willing to say, don't mess with Suggs, right? Because apparently I was a little more quick in some ways. And so I was able to get through on that level, and I always had jobs. I mean, I had a strong work ethic. My father, had a menial job, but he was a voracious reader, and my mother was a woman of deep faith. So the household was very sacred, and cleanliness was like, was absolutely required. We had to, scrub the floors every day. And I had a sister, and he honored, of course, my mother and my sister. And today, my sister, who was a caregiver for my mother, we have a wonderful relationship. She's a very special person. So I'm a blessed person in the sense that nothing special about me, but I've been in environments and have interacted with people who've been extremely helpful and for me.
So share this with me. You had all of this exposure. You had mentioned before we started recording that your background, some would assign to you the word privileged. However, your demeanor since I've known you is very laid back. Your leadership style is in the back of the room, but clearly Dr. Suggs is there, and you're orchestrating stuff. You're making it happen. Now, with this calm demeanor, you indicated to me earlier that you're angry. I want to know what you're angry about.
Well, I think because I know the history of our people in this, and it's not unique. I mean, if you look at world history, there are a lot of people who've been oppressed, but I mean, this is something that I live, and I feel a special obligation because I have been able to do as it goes, starting from very modest beginnings, and being a person with again, modest talent, people who are much more talented, gifted, energetic, who have not had the opportunities, I guess, that I've had. But remember that my brother was murdered, and so I've got all of the history, and I am very strongly connected to African American people. When you're working class, what you aspire to be is middle class. And so I got to middle class, or even upper middle class, one might say, because I was in the art business, and so I was around an environment that was probably a little more, I guess, considered to be more elevated. But what I never wanted to do, and I feel this way so strongly, that those are my people, and I've never seen anybody. I mean, I don't like their behavior. When that boy gets shot down, that's painful for me. I'm not saying because I'm sitting over here traveling and enjoying and having this kind of privileged experience. That I'm not I care for that. I'm not trying to separate myself from that because I do know that the history does not start with just 20 years ago. I mean, I know the nature of slavery. I know how it traumatized people. And I know not all of us, not everybody is affected in the same way. And the more you know, the more you are offended by the way your people have been treated. I mean, my mother had a menial job. My mother's a wonderful person. My father is a brilliant man. He went to third grade. I mean, that was all a part of the political and economic structure and the history of the country. So when you know that and you have a chance to have a little more flexibility, then you have two options. You can say, well, I'm going to go over here where I'm welcome, relatively speaking. The art world takes you into a really very refined, elevated world, and my children went to boarding school. So I've been in environments where people really are living what's considered to be the most, I guess, coveted kind of lifestyle. I mean, the art business takes you to that world. But my cousin Snooki, I mean, that's my root. That's my, and I do understand people who gather together around their concern for their people, and particularly the least of these. And that's why I would say that the values I learned in church, Elder Davis, Elder Blakely, really wonderful men, wonderful men, wonderful men. And my father, and he devoted, to his children. I mean, the abuse that he took, the hardship and the mistreatment that he endured, and the humiliations, so that I could come a step further. So I still feel my father, and I want him to be proud, And I don't want to give the impression that I've lived any kind of exemplary life, but I've never, ever not accepted these values as what were, which should be, the guidelines for living your life, even when I fell short, and I did too many times. You get older, it's easier to be more upright.
You mentioned that your older brother was murdered.
My younger brother.
Younger brother was murdered. What happened?
Well, I don't like to get into it. It's painful for me still, It's very painful for me.
And
Because
it lives with you now?
Yeah, well, it's my brother. I'm very strongly tied to your family, and he was, taller and better looking and more sensitive and all that, and he just got caught up in some things, and he changed his life, and he got cut down. So it's, it still hurts. It still hurts.
As you live with that, and as you move forward with that.
Excuse me, sorry.
No, it's part of the conversation. Black men have a challenge surviving this world.
Yes.
Speaking as one, and speaking for your cousin, and speaking for your brother, how do you deal with that?
Well, I think that we've got a culture that's, there's no accident. If we looked at the most successful African Americans materially in St. Louis, almost all of them did not come from what I call the urban male upbringing. And I just listened the other day to President Barack Obama. Barack Obama he had no urban male upbringing. And that can be deadly in the kind of society we have, because the values we embrace are not appropriate for our circumstances. What one should be proud of is how I will make things better for my family, how I will make things better for my community. And we get caught up in things that I think just are not, that are almost backwards. What makes you, why would you want swag? What you should want in a spouse is a good father. And what you should want in a spouse is a good, a good person. The idea of clothes, cars, all that, that unfortunately I think has seeped too much into the culture. And there's some things, as I said to you earlier, I mean, I don't separate myself from any of this, but I do call it what it is. I mean, it is wrong for people, particularly people who have suffered.
Yeah.
Particularly people who have an opportunity to do better. And I do think that what happened to us as a people is systematically we were treated in a way, and I think we internalized a lot of that, feeling like we don't need to measure up to the kind of standard of behavior. We should take pride in the things that really matter, not so much in some superficial things that I think are an integral part, unfortunately, a lot of male black upbringing. I said earlier, I could cite for you and say who are the people that are most successful. Almost all of them come from our traditional black male upbringing. I mean,
What does that say?
Missouri or somebody, yes, right. Because that upbringing, Barack Obama would not be president of the United States if he'd come up in a black urban setting and absorbed the culture. He would not be president of the United States today because there'd be some stuff on him that he'd done, he should have done. And I'm not talking about smoking joints. So, no, it's one of the problems we have. I think that any people who are oppressed, you have to start. The most important, significant thing you have to do is you have to start there. You have to kind of live that, find some way. And I do think for African Americans, the most likely place they could find that to purge some of this mark of oppression is through faith. I'm not in a good position to be speaking about that with authority. But after all, having lived a long time and been around a lot of conversations, discussions, I think for us, I hope it to be progressive, because, they've used Christianity to enslave people. They legitimize slavery. They say themselves to be about, they legitimize apartheid. They legitimize Jim Crow. They legitimize the Ku Klux Klan. Well, that's a perversion of Christianity. We could embrace it as a way, as a road to our liberation, which is what we need. Even our material poverty is not nearly as significant as the slavery of the mind. There's a difference between being a slave and being enslaved. The enslaved person is simply confined, locked down, restricted physically. The slave is a person where they've got to you and convince you are lesser human being. That's deadly for a people.
And you talked about earlier, and I really appreciated how you put it, purging the mark of oppression. And this show and the communication that we're receiving is purging the mark of trauma, purging the mark of pain. Even you yourself have kind of said there are certain places that you can't even allow yourself to go because of the pain of loss and of grief and of love. So for those, Dr. Suggs, that may be in your same situation, we have closed doors to certain things. We can't talk about certain things because the pain is just that great, and that really is connected to the trauma, whether it is on an individual level or racism. How do you cope with, survive the trauma in your own life, and what is your advice to us about how we endure this?
I think for me, I've clearly I've had some balance in my life, fortunate in that way. But I think that you have to first of all acknowledge your situation. I don't think that, obviously a lot of our travail is based on what was done to us as a people, but I don't think that that's going to be, we're not going to be truly emancipated until we find that inside ourselves. And I think that the moment for me that was most I was most optimistic in the 60s because you had people there who were arguing they didn't want to be dealt with in that way. And I see the millennials that protested the shooting of Michael Brown, that same kind of notion that you don't want to be treated in that way. You want your humanity, you want to be dealt with your fullness. It doesn't mean that you are opposed to anybody else. I don't buy the notion that we think it's about white people, but I think some of this is institutional, and I think some of this is structural. And obviously you have to be in opposition to that, and I think that you're not in a country where you are the majority. You can't impose your will physically, but there are things you can do. I think you can align yourself with like-minded people. Barack Obama would not be president if some whites had not voted for him. 56% of whites did not vote for him. But an awful lot of white people did vote for him, and so did a lot of blacks and Hispanics. So I do think there are people who really, it's hard not to have racial feelings in a society like ours. It's so polarized. But it doesn't get in the way. I do think there's goodness in people, and I do think that most people would rather be aligned with what is good, what is fair, what is just. There are people who are on extremes, obviously, but I think that I still have faith in things.
What do you think about, given post the uprising and the agitation that's happening around Ferguson? What happened with Michael Brown? What do you think?
Oppressed people need to push back against their oppression. Now, the expression of it and the motivation for some individuals around it, I think the whole notion of I don't want to be dealt with in that way is appropriate. I think that what you heard from the Department of Justice about the police response, I mean, you have to object to being dealt with in that way. And we know that we know that they're prepared to deal with that issue. Law enforcement is essential, necessary, but it has to have boundaries. We have to insist that humanity be respected. You just can't leave people to say, listen, those are unruly folks over there, and that's where all the crime comes from. So listen, you got free reign to mistreat them. So whether it's in neighborhoods, in prisons, you cannot accept the denial of people's basic humanity. To do that is not only what it does to the victim, but what it does to you, the perpetrator. And I'm so delighted now to see that this Confederate flag has been revealed for what it is. It is a symbol of what was vile, evil in our history, and we need symbols that are more represent reconciliation. These monuments are being praised because this was supposed to be an honor of the war fought by Southerners. It's absolute nonsense. The war was fought around slavery. I don't think every individual that is involved in the Confederate forces realize that. But basically and unequivocally, it was about slavery, period.
And what role has media played in projecting both the lie and the truth?
Yeah, well, you write the history, and its history is more, kind. But the reality, and I think all the scholarship, it's not me saying this, the scholarship says unequivocally, and they say in their writings of Confederacy that we have a people here who are subject people, and appropriate because we are superior. The white supremacy was accepted, not just in the South and parts of the North as well. But this is a long story. I'm sorry we don't have time.
No, it's okay. I think I've only got two more thoughts to ask you about, and you can see what you have left that you just want to share because you want to. Because when you get to be 80 plus, you can do what you want to do.
Well, I don't know about 80 plus. I think that I hope that I'm not. Is that the cognitive decline I talked about has to start to study? People age differently. People my age, they expect you to be. When you get on the subway, the first time I was 75 or something, and I'm on the subway, and this young fellow, gets up and says that we're in my seat. Because I was perfectly standing. As long as you are able to, think fairly clearly, try to. So I'm being a little bit defensive about that.
So here's my two. My two questions are the first one of the two is you selected as part of your legacy, not all of it, the American, St. Louis American. What is the purpose? What is the overall mission of the American? What does it do for us?
What we seek to do, our mission is to try to create something that is credible, that is relevant, and that is helpful as a community tries to address some of the challenge that it has. So I see ourselves ideally as being more integrated into the community and all of the aspects of the community, which, as you know, is it's increasingly diverse community itself. So I would want to see, and I don't know what form it takes, whether it's digital. Now our core business is print, we're multi-platform. But the content, the notion that we can speak, have a forum where we can talk about things, we have a way we can share our accomplishments, where we can tell the good news, where we can give that perspective in our own voice, in our own informed voice. So, it turns out to be journalism, but it's also advocacy journalism that tries to speak on behalf of a people's concern, or community's concerns. And a community that, quite frankly, is not monolithic, so it has its own views, but that's what I would hope. But I think that it's only a part of a fabric that we need to try to create. And I don't think it's going to be exclusively African Americans who are going to create this. After all, St. Louis America wouldn't exist if we didn't have, at least tacitly, quite support. St. Louis America is very costly every week, but there are advertisers and there are events, so we have had enormous amount of support. Individuals, our staff is multiracial, multi-ethnic, but it is driven by some shared values and some interest in trying to be a positive force in the community. We happen to be targeting the African Americans, but 20% of our 18% of our leadership is not African American. And who knows what's happening in the social media space. So it's that we hope that we'll leave this to the next generation who will take this and build on it. And the form it takes will, but it's essential that it be rooted in and committed to the community.
This is my last one for you. This will be easy for you. I want you to finish my sentence. The most difficult thing I've ever had to do is.
There's no one thing that's my son passed away.
The turning point in my life was.
No epiphany. I think it was a process over time.
I've changed my perspective the most when it comes to
the value of material things.
my philosophy on life is.
Try to be of service according to your capacity. So everybody can be of service. That can be of service.
Last one. With the time I'm graced to have on this earth, I will.
Try to continue the work that I've been involved with most of my life. And try to provide for succession. I think that often institutions that have some value that you don't provide for succession. So it's very important that how you try to provide for succession. No, we didn't talk about something I know something about. Which
Talk
is
about
art.
something.
Art,
Talk about something.
I recommend people go to see this wonderful show. It's called Some New Food. It's about art from Africa. I used to be in that business, so it's one of those things. St. Louis has lots of things that we probably could improve upon, but there's some wonderful things here, particularly on the cultural side, and that's one of the things I would not miss. It's called Some New Food. It's at St. Louis Art Museum.
From now until when?
I think until September. It's only 3 venues: Cleveland, I think St. Louis, and then it's going to France.
Well, I will personally do that. Thank you for sharing that good news. Anything else you want to share?
Well, nothing except I think that, the wider view about the world, I think the more you understand that, sometimes we tend to be a little bit provincial, limited in our thinking. We need to have a broader view about the world, and we companies I think the sooner we can have a broader view, the probably better for particularly those who are, for whatever reasons, in this leadership position.
Love and respect to you, Dr. Suggs. Thanks for
Thank you so
everything
much
you've done for
having
me
me.
personally
Thank you very much.
and for this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you, your family, or your organization is interested in talking about how we better the well-being of the region, sign up for more information, join the conversation, log on to aliveandwellstl.com, and let's build a plan on how we can work together and improve our overall health and become alive and well.